All right, today we're diving into a bit of a medical mystery. It's one of those cases where two totally different infections can show up with the exact same first clue, kicking off a race against time for doctors to figure out what's really going on.
And it all kicks off with this one thing, urethritis. It's an inflammation that's usually pretty uncomfortable, maybe even a little alarming, and it's the one symptom that sends people to the doctor for both of these infections.
But here's the crucial question, the one that changes everything. What if the actual bug causing that symptom is completely different? Because, spoiler alert, it often is. And getting that diagnosis right is absolutely essential. So, you ready? Let's play detective. We're going to follow the clinical clues, head to the lab, and crack the case of infective urethritis. Okay, first things first, before we can solve anything, we need to get a handle on the problem itself. What are we actually talking about when we say this all starts from the same place? So, urethritis, in the simplest terms, is just inflammation of the urethra. This usually leads to a couple of key signs. It can be painful to urinate, the technical term for that is dyscharge, and there's often some kind of discharge. But really, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The inflammation is just the clue. The real story is finding out what's causing it. All right, with the initial problem defined, it's time to meet our two main suspects. These are the bacteria behind the inflammation, and you'll see they have very different ways of operating. Our first suspect is a pretty famous one, Neisseria gonorrhoeae. This is the classic bacterium that causes the infection we all know as gonorrhea. You can think of this one as the more obvious of our two culprits, the usual suspect, if you will. But here's the thing, it's a huge mistake to just assume it's always gonorrhea. In fact, there's another culprit out there that's even more common, but it's much, much sneakier. And here it is, suspect number 2, chlamydia trachomatis. This is the leading cause of a whole category of infections called non-gonococcal urethritis, or NGU. That's really just a catch-all term for any urethritis that isn't caused by gonorrhea. Now, the key phrase to remember here is obligate intracellular. It means this bacterium is incredibly stealthy. It has to live inside our own cells to survive. It's like a spy, hiding in plain sight, which makes it way harder to find. Okay, so we've got our suspect profiles. Now, let's start comparing their patterns, their MOs, if you will. We'll look at the specific signs they cause, and maybe most importantly, how quickly they make their presence known. One of the first major clues is the timeline. You can see a big difference right here in the incubation period. Gonorrhea tends to show up pretty quickly. NGU, on the other hand, is way more patient. It can take a week, maybe 10 days, sometimes even longer for symptoms to appear. The next clue we can look at is the discharge itself. And this is a classic clinical distinction. Gonorrhea often causes what's called a purulent discharge, which is basically pus-like. The discharge with NGU is usually mucopurulent. That's a mix of mucus and pus. And it can sometimes be a lot less obvious. And this is exactly why getting the right diagnosis is so incredibly important. If you leave them untreated, both of these infections can cause serious long-term problems. Gonorrhea can lead to painful conditions like epididymitis and can even spread through the body. An NGU from chlamydia can cause pelvic inflammatory disease in women and even a pretty serious condition called reactive arthritis. So comparing symptoms gives us some really strong hints, but it's not enough to be sure. To really close this case, we need to bring in the forensic team. We need proof from the lab. And this is where the investigation really starts to heat up. Looking under the microscope is often the first big break in the case, giving us a really clear idea of which culprit we're dealing with. And this side right here is the aha moment. On the left with gonorrhea, a gram stain lets you actually see the bacteria. You can see those little pairs of gram-negative bugs often hanging out inside the inflammatory cells. But with NGU caused by chlamydia, you get this fascinating clue called sterile pyuria. You see the body's response team. All the inflammatory cells are there, but the enemy itself is invisible. Why? Because chlamydia is a ghost in the machine, hiding inside those cells where the SING can't see it. Now, the microscope is a fantastic, fast tool. But modern science has given us something even better. We now have a gold standard for diagnosis that really leaves no room for doubt. And they're called NOTs, which stands for nucleic acid amplification tests. You can basically think of these as a form of DNA evidence. These tests are so powerful because they don't look for the bacteria itself, they look for its unique genetic fingerprint. It's the modern, definitive way to ID both of our culprits.
So, with a confirmed diagnosis from the lab, we can finally move to the last and most important step, getting the right treatment to knock out the infection and prevent any of those nasty complications.
And this right here is why all that detective work was so critical. Each of these infections is treated with a different antibiotic. For gonorrhea, it's ceftriaxone. For NGU caused by chlamydia, it's azithromycin or doxycycline. It's simple. Using the wrong key won't open the lock, and using the wrong antibiotic won't cure the infection. Now, here's a fun little plot twist. Sometimes these two culprits work together. A person can actually be infected with both at the same time. In those cases, where a doctor suspects a co-infection, they'll often just treat for both, using a combination of drugs to make sure both cases are officially closed. And this might be the single most important public health takeaway from all of this. To really stop the cycle of infection and keep it from spreading, it's not enough to treat just one person. Both partners have to get treated, every single time. It's totally non-negotiable. So in the end, solving this medical mystery really shows you the power of getting an accurate diagnosis. It's a reminder that a single symptom can have many different causes, but with the right tools and quick medical care, we can find the right answer. And it leaves us with one final thought. Knowing just how crucial the right diagnosis is, what's our next step in being proactive about our own health?